Well, good evening, everybody. This is Mark Vines, and welcome to the Mark Vines Show. And thanks for listening. And please spread this podcast to all your friends, family members, ex-family members, ex-friends, liberals, anybody that you think that could benefit from this inoculation of liberalism that's occurring here in the United States. And please check me out on my Facebook site, the Mark Vines Show. Reach out and give me a like, give me a follow. Give me comments, give me ideas, anything that you'd like to talk about, but just happy that you're here. And tonight we have a special guest, and our guest is going to be Heather Mitchell. And Heather Mitchell, if you are not aware, is running for the House of Delegates seat down in the 2nd District here in Virginia. And she'll be telling us about that. The person that is in the position now has made a decision to run for governor. And so that's put this seat up for bid. And it's created a special election. Now, with the election presidential election that just happened this year, and of course the special election occurring in Georgia, that's taking up all of the press time that's out there. And it's really kind of pushed to the side some of these other races that are going on. And many of you may not even know that there's a special election going on down there in the second district of Virginia. And in a way that's kind of good, because really whoever wins this race, it's going to be the person that was able to mobilize the most votes. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. So Heather, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, well, thank you for coming on. And I know that this is a quick turnaround. This election is next week, so you're sprinting. You're not even running. You're sprinting at this point towards the finish line. So if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, why you decided to run, and let's just talk about some of your big pet peeve issues. And I might even bring up a few of my own. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my family and we moved here to Virginia in 2014 from Okinawa, Japan. My husband is a active duty Marine. Currently, he is stationed in Guam. It was kind of neat. He was there when they just stood up Camp Blas. So that's the big news in Guam. But when we moved here in 2014, my oldest daughter had just graduated from Kubasaki in Okinawa, and she had gotten a partial scholarship to Marymount University up in Arlington. And my middle child was starting as a freshman in high school, and my youngest was starting middle school. And my husband and I really sat and thought about putting roots down for the kids. We didn't want to do just, our 2 or 3 years and out, because we'd end up moving between my daughter's junior and senior year of high school. And we wanted to have them, some stability in their lives, because my husband's been in the Marine Corps for 27 years. So we have lived from, Lejeune, 29 Palms, Fort Leonard Wood, Iwakuni, just all over the place. And so, we decided, we're going to put some roots down in Virginia. And I've always been interested in politics, but because we've moved so much, I never had an opportunity to get involved. And when we bought our house here in Stafford, I went down to the Stafford Republican Committee, and I walked out literally out of the first meeting as the magisterial chair for the Rock Hill District.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, okay, sure. I would love to do it, because, throughout my husband's career, one of the things that, any military wife or spouse truly understands is that in order to make friends, you just have to kind of put yourself out there and just jump in, feet first into whatever situation. Yeah. So I kind of, picked up the ball and just started running with it. And it led to me, volunteering for the Republican Party of Virginia, which led to me working on individual candidate races, from supervisor races to delegate races to governor's race, Senate race, and then ultimately led me to, I was on the staff of the chairman up in Prince William County. So I worked with the Prince William Board of County Supervisors and became very involved with the issues in Prince William, and then plus with me living in Stafford. I did run for the seat in 2019, and unfortunately it did not go the way that I had hoped, but it was a great learning experience for me. And when I heard that our now former delegate, because she basically out of nowhere just said, hey, I'm going to resign this Friday. And that was like, whoa, okay. So everybody, was scrambling because Governor Northam had, proposed the date of January 5th for the special election. So we learned about the seat opening on December 9th. And, next day we're running out, trying to get, a bank account set up, a PO box. And it's just been, you were right. We've been sprinting. We're not running a campaign. We are, sprinting a campaign. But my biggest reason as to why I am doing this is having lived all over the place, and, seeing how things work in one area, could benefit. Hey, why don't we try this here? And the biggest part is just the lack of representation, especially in this district, because our former delegate, she lived in Prince William, and she never came down to Stafford. My supervisor, I live in the Rock Hill district. My supervisors never even met the delegate. Our sheriff here in Stafford had gone down to Richmond to speak on behalf of the bill at the beginning of this past year, called her office 3 times, and he never even received a phone call from her. So when I say Stafford has been ignored, it's been ignored. But also what's interesting is the northern part of the district that lies in Prince William, that's also been ignored. And I can say that with certainty because when I worked for the Prince William Board of County Supervisors, there was always meetings, and I ran into all of the other delegates that covered Prince William. Never did I run into my delegate. So for me, when I found out she was, I don't say she resigned. I say that she abandoned her district. In the midst of a pandemic, when there's so many issues affecting, everybody's lives, she's more concerned about raising money so that she can run for governor. I wish her well, but we need a delegate that actually represents a district. And this is a community that has reached out to me and has helped me and my family on so many occasions, because in the 6 years that we've lived here, my husband's been in Guam for the last year and a half. And then prior to that, he actually spent a year in Liberia. So I've, had to, put mom and dad hat on, with kids, especially now with my son. It's his senior year of high school. And the big joke was, with my 2 daughters, I was the one that helped with all of the college applications, any of the running around. And I was like, all right, the boy's yours. You get to do this, with our son. And now that, he's trying to get into the Merchant Marine Academy, there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through just to submit an application.
Yeah.
And so it's been, it's been a crazy time, but I want to give back to my area. Our former delegate and one of the other delegate that represents Stafford earlier this year voted for 2 different House bills that they knew would take away an estimated $800,000 of transportation funding from Stafford to give down to Hampton Roads. And if you've driven any of the back roads in Stafford, that is monies that is desperately needed. And I want to be, a voice for our community and say, hey, Stafford and the eastern end of Prince William that the Second House District covers, there's a lot of road issues there also. What makes it interesting is the Second House District actually overlaps two different transportation regions. You've got Prince William belonging to the Northern Virginia District. Stafford belongs to the Fredericksburg District, which has most of the northern neck, like King George, Westmoreland, Northumberland counties, Caroline County. And the needs in this area, those area is a lot different than what we actually need in Stafford, because we've got, the I-95 corridor goes straight through Stafford,
Yep.
Up through Prince William, same with Route 1. And you have to have somebody that's on top of both regions going to the meetings, showing up, learning. And that's the biggest thing is we need somebody just to show up. And it's been so long since we've had somebody. You have to go back to Mark Dudenhofer back in 2015.
Yeah, and it's kind of stunning how absent she is, and now she's running for the governor's office. It's pretty stunning.
It is, and my opponent is pretty much a carbon copy of her. When you look at the endorsements that she's received endorsements from Future Now, Planned Parenthood, NARAL, all of these nationwide organizations, and they don't care about John and Jane Smith on, River Ridge Boulevard in Prince William. And I am proud to say I have been endorsed by almost a dozen current and former supervisors in Stafford County. I'm being endorsed by 3 of the supervisors currently in Prince William County. I've received the endorsements from Sheriff Hill in Prince William and by Sheriff Decatur in Stafford County. Yeah. And these are the endorsements I want. I want the local endorsements because this is who you're representing. This is who you're advocating for, not for, national organizations.
No, and this is a very, very difficult time that we're in right now. And let me ask you right now, what do you think is the biggest, most pressing issue facing the voters in the 2nd District right now? What's the biggest issue?
There's actually, I guess you could say 3. And obviously COVID. The lack of communication from Richmond to the localities. I spoke to a supervisor here in Stafford yesterday. They don't even know when they're going to get vaccinations. Nobody has notified them of anything. And so I think, establishing, a clear chain of command of, okay, this is when, we should be getting this and have a plan, open line of communication so that people understand what's going on. That ties into the second major issue is getting our kids back into school. My son has been sitting at my kitchen table, except for his summer break since March, going to school. And I saw a study that came out of the Virginia Department of Education showing the reading gap of K through 3rd graders is just expanding astronomically. And one of the hardest hit areas, like up in Prince William, is the Woodbridge District, which is an area that the Second House District covers. So we've got to get, a plan to get teachers and students back into the classroom so they have in-person learning, so that these kids aren't falling farther and farther behind. And then the third issue, which is always an issue, is transportation, roads. sitting in the traffic on 610 or even down on 17, Route 1 up in Prince William. You learn during the summer on weekends to find every back road that you can possibly find, even if it's an hour out of your way, to get from, point A to point B, because 95 is going to be a parking lot. And what happens is people get off of 95 and they get onto Route 1. So now you've got 2 parking lots. So that is something that really needs to be addressed. And to have an advocate, especially for that corridor of, Prince William and Stafford, you've got to have a strong voice there, saying, yes, I understand, Hampton Roads, but also, look what's going on here.
I'll add another one in there, maybe even a fourth one. And this is something that you can throw in. And that is you talked about the kids getting back into school, but how about businesses and the reopening of businesses?
Yes. Oh, that's a huge issue.
Yeah. So that'd be the fourth one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are so many small businesses that are now unfortunately closed for good. My favorite coffee shop, it's right around the corner. It is owned by, a retired Marine. And I love this place. And, they have been fortunate enough to have such community support that they've been able to stay open. But the owner has had to let go his entire staff. And it's him and his wife working every single day, trying to, cover the bills. But I've seen a lot of small businesses just completely shut down. We need to, get the small businesses back open so that they can rehire these employees, because over the past year, the unemployment rate in Virginia has doubled. And it's because, all of these small businesses are having to lay off workers. I will say, though, Virginia's unemployment is blessedly a lot lower than a lot of the other states. But, the other states, they're not my focus. My focus is on getting businesses back open, getting these small businesses able to, rehire their employees, because the restrictions that have been coming down are so confusing to a lot of people. There doesn't seem to be a very clear plan, and how it's affecting everyone, obviously is different. But what I found interesting is, like, my oldest daughter, she lives, her and her husband, they live in Gainesville, the western end of Prince William, and they are actually trying to buy a house. And when they started doing their loan application, it said, okay, what do you make? And my daughter, she works for, I don't know if I'm allowed to say who she works for, but she works for a very well-known fitness organization. Mm-hmm. She is a fitness coach, and she is paid by how many people she has attending her class. Mm-hmm. So generally, she has between 25 and 30 people in her class. So she does, fairly well. Then when COVID first came out, understandably, with the restrictions, I totally, understood it at the beginning. But when the restrictions were easing and they were like, okay, you have to go through this protocol to make sure, everything is safe. So her company, they spent a lot of money, putting in, HEPA filters and all of this equipment to make sure everything is cleaned and sanitized after every use. And then now it goes back to, okay, you can only have a gathering of 10 people. So now she can only have 9 students in a class plus her. And so the uncertainty that's happening with each round of restrictions, it's just that we've got to come up with a plan. A clear plan on how to do this.
Something else, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. And by the way, it's interesting that you use that very example. I'm a spin instructor myself. So
I used to be one.
Yeah, it's something that I do just as a hobby and part time. And so I'm very familiar with that restriction that you just mentioned, and that is having 9 students in one instructor, and no more than 10 persons in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
I really don't, because what I don't understand the science behind this, and I've not had anybody tell me the science that's behind it. But here's what I don't understand, and this is why I hope that someone like yourself gets in the house and starts looking at this and asking these questions. Because how is it that I can't have more than 10 people in a spin room, but I can have an unlimited number of people in a Walmart or a Home Depot or a liquor store, for that matter? I can go gamble. I can there's all kinds of things. In fact, I have flown no less than 3 times since I've been since COVID hit. And I won't mention the name of the airline, but it was the same airline all 3 times. And there was not one empty seat on the flight. But yet getting onto the flight, we were told, keep your mask on, keep your distance. If you refuse to comply, then you will be banned from this airline for 1 year. Then you get on the airplane and you're sitting, not one empty seat. And then we're told again, once you get off, you have to social distance. I mean, it's really makes no sense whatsoever. And we seem as a government to be picking and choosing who this applies to. And by the way, the gym that I'm at, I am not aware of anybody contracting COVID from the where they pinpointed it originating in the gym. My local Walmart, my local Home Depot, where there's people everywhere, I am not aware of anybody saying that's where they contracted COVID. But yet we have locked all of these businesses down, and it is destroying our economy, and it is destroying people. And I still have not seen the data that supports this. In fact, the governor, as you know, has now stated that we can't travel between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. And I don't understand the science behind that either. So this bothers me. This bothers me a great deal, and I know it bothers the listeners as well, because this is, look, in March when COVID started, I get it. That we didn't understand what was happening. But, in December of the same year, we have a lot more data to work with, and we can pinpoint things. We can focus on the people that need it, because certainly there are people, high-risk individuals. Absolutely, we need to protect them. But for everyone else, what is the benefit to shutting down our economy the way that we have?
Yeah, and I mean, there's no rationale, rhyme or reason as to why they're doing things. Even going back, to getting our kids back into school, there are studies that have been done coming out of Europe, and I think even part of Canada, that they've had in-person schooling all year, and it's not been an issue. And you can even divide it to where, in school you have like a morning group and an afternoon group. I know when I was younger and I lived in South Carolina, they were building a new school because the one school I went to was so overcrowded. They broke it up into 2 shifts, and there was no issue. I mean, we can do that, to make sure, to keep, the teachers safe. But then that also goes back to, okay, well, when are we going to be able to start getting the vaccination in our area? Where is it going to be distributed from? Who's distributing it? Who are the ones that are going to be getting it first? So, obviously you're looking at your first responders, your firefighters, police, paramedics, nurses, doctors, the most, maybe the most vulnerable of our community gets it first. But also with teachers, let the teachers get vaccinated. Obviously, studies have come out that, children are not, they're not as high of a risk of carrying it. But I mean, there's ways that we can do this, and it's ways that we could have already done this or implemented it if we actually had a clear line of communication. But I think a lot of the Democrat leadership, actually, they don't mind stringing this out, because what they've been doing is why people are more concerned about COVID they are, it's the sleight of hand trick. Look over here while you're looking at one hand. What are they doing with the other hand? I mean, you look at the special session that Governor Northam called over the summer. That was 85 days. I think it was almost 60 days before the Education Committee even met. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the reasons why Governor Northam called the special session. And it just baffles my mind, because what they did was, that's when they were shoving through all of these social justice reforms that had nothing to do with COVID. Mm-hmm. And
like defunding the police and really attacking our police forces during that time, because it was all this hurricane that came together of issues, seemingly unrelated, and they were unrelated, but it just seemed to be a power grab. And that really, to me, and I don't know if you agree with this, maybe explain your position on this, but it just seems like this whole idea of COVID has just been used to be a big power grab.
I actually agree. I do agree with that. Don't get me wrong. I do fully recognize the seriousness of mm-hmm. COVID and the devastation that it has, over a lot of the population. I fully understand that. And, I am a firm believer. I'm told, wear your mask. I wear my mask. Because I'm a rule follower. Mm-hmm. If it's a rule, okay, I'm going to do it. I may not agree with it, but I'm going to do it. But the things that have noticed, what happened, up in Prince William, this is a good example, with the, sleight of hand trick that I feel that the Democrat leadership is doing right now. One of the Woodbridge district supervisor, over the summer, convened a task force to study basically critical race theory. And at the beginning of December, the Board of County Supervisors met with the school board, because what the board thought they were going to be discussing was that report that I've referenced earlier about the reading gap. And they sit down, and the task force person decided that they were going to show a presentation on implicit bias, and had nothing to do with, trying to, get our kids back into school or what needs to be done to make sure that our students are succeeding. They wanted to teach implicit bias. And so 3 of the Republican supervisors got up and left. Because and this is what is happening throughout all of Virginia. And it's because, people aren't as engaged as they should be. Yeah. I find my news sources however I can. I don't, go to any of the, mainstream media sources, because everything's so, it's such a horror story, every time you read something, and, it's very, biased one way or the other. And so, the average person is having a really hard time trying to see what is actually going on and what is the correct information. And that's why, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I will have a very transparent, open, conversations with everybody. But, in particular, make sure that I'm communicating with each of the Board of Supervisors in Prince William and in Stafford County, mm-hmm. so that everybody is on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing with our society today is you really do have to do your homework. You really do. And that's why I'm saying, and I agree with you, by the way. I don't want it to sound like I don't believe in following the rules and I'm not taking COVID seriously. I am. It's just that I think that we can be much more targeted, and I think that we can be smarter. I think that we can do both. I think 2 things can coexist. We can open our economy and we can open our businesses, and we can do that safely and protect those that need to be protected. I think you're like me in that I trust people to be, I trust business people because we tend to adapt and we tend to do things because, if you're a business owner, it's not in your financial interest to have anybody contract COVID in your business. So you are going to do everything that you can to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Right.
And people are,
Right.
like I mentioned the gym, for example, where I teach. I am not aware of anybody pinpointing them contracting COVID to the gym that I teach at. And it's because the gym that I teach at is also very, very conscious of this. And they go to great length to protect the patrons of the business. And I think the difference between me and a typical Democrat is I trust people to do that. I warn you, if I'm the government, so if I'm in a political office, I tell you what the dangers are. I tell you what you need to, I give you the recommendations. I give you the guidelines and then trust that you will follow that through. And, I think that that's just the way that we have to go. And it sounds like you lean that way as well.
Oh, no, I do. I have faith in people. I do. Government, not as much because, what you've seen, the corruption and, the power grabs. And it seems to me that, a lot of elected officials, not all of them, but it seems the longer you stay in office, the less concerned they are about the actual job.
That's right.
And it's about, retaining that power. I'm doing this because I generally care about my area. I have no desire to be, governor one day or whatever. What my dream would be able to be, to speak on behalf of my neighbors in, the Second House District. To me, that would just be the most wonderful thing if I ever had that, if I have the opportunity to do that, because it's not about me. It's about, your neighbors. And that's what I think a lot of people lose sight of.
Yeah. And you know what? One other issue that I would like to address, and I've not heard you talk about this yet, so it'd be interesting to see your take on this. So we touched on COVID. We've talked about the shutting down of businesses, the hurting of businesses and people and schools and all of these different areas. And that's in 2020, obviously, that's the big issue, along with defunding the police and all of the racial unrest that's occurred. But something that it was big in the beginning of the Trump administration, but it seems to have died off a bit with some of the other issues that have come up, is addiction and mental health. Which seems to have spiked. For those that have listened to my podcast for a while and know me, addiction issues, mental health issues, that's a real pet peeve of mine. In fact, I have a whole nother podcast that I do that talks about that specifically. And in my world, in the work that I do in that arena, I have seen more relapses. I have seen more issues. I have seen more mental health issues pop up. I have attended more funerals for suicides this year than I ever have in my adult life. And that seems to be the issue that nobody is talking about. And to me, just observing the lay of the land here, what has happened in the country with COVID is intertwined with the mental health and addiction issue. And what are your thoughts on how that's being addressed in Virginia, and how would you address it if you were to be elected?
Well, no, you are spot on with what you said. The rise in domestic abuse, suicide, drug addictions, alcoholism, all of that. I mean, it's really hard to gauge because obviously everybody's, quarantined, everybody's self-isolating. And when you are, a person that needs to be around other people and you're forced, you can't, you're going to try to find other ways, to, either through, a beer or, maybe you have some, had a surgery and you start, going back on to, painkillers. But it's hard to just really put into words because, Yeah, not, I wasn't expecting it, but it's something that I have thought about a lot because
Yeah.
I see the effects.
Oh yeah.
My brother is actually a firefighter down in Florida, and I was on the phone with him the other day, and just talking to catch up, and just listening to some of the runs that his unit's having, or his station is having to go out on. It's not fires, it's not car accidents, it's calls from neighbors of drug overdoses.
Yep.
Of suicides. These are the, you always hear about unintended side effects.
Yes.
That's what's happening, is because of having all of this, you have to quarantine, you are not allowed to drive from midnight to 5 a.m. You must be quarantined in your house for X amount of time. It is just, humans are social creatures.
Yeah.
And when you are denied that, you're going to find other ways to try to alleviate whatever, feelings of depression you may have. It's just, it's absolutely heartbreaking. And
it is. And it's the thing that in the recovery community, for a lot of different reasons, and this would be another discussion for another time because it would be a long discussion, people in the recovery world are actually taught in large, and I'm generalizing here, but for most of the folks that are out there, are taught to not discuss recovery issues in public forums and out in the open. And consequently, this is an area that is not addressed. It is not talked about. But if you're familiar with the recovery world, you see it. It is in your face, the problems that are. I cannot tell you how many people I personally know that have had decades of sobriety and then this year relapsed hard. And this is something that's not talked about. But you mark my words that academics down the road, when the studies are done, when people are doing their PhD theses and talking about this stuff, we're going to find that the mental health issues that arose out of this year, 2020, will far exceed the deaths that occurred due to COVID. Far exceed it. And we don't see it now, but we will down the road. And this is something that I do not believe that the governor here in Virginia is addressing properly, if he's addressing it at all. And I do not see the legislature addressing this at all. So I hope that, God willing, you get elected to this position, that this is something that you'll keep in the back of your mind when you have those discussions in Richmond.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
Mm-hmm. So with that, any last words of thoughts, words of wisdom, advice? What's your call to action to the community, to anybody that's listening to us right now?
My call to action is go out and vote on January 5th. I know a lot of people feel that, my vote doesn't count. Trust me, your vote counts. I worked on a race where the winner was decided by 12 votes.
Yeah.
There was one delegate race where they determined the winner by drawing a name out of a bowl because they were tied. And this happened in Virginia. I believe it was in 2017. So your vote does matter. Make sure you go out. Make sure you tell your friends, tell your neighbors. If you're interested in getting involved, you can go to my website, which is mitchell4va.com, and it's Mitchell, FORVA.com. Read up, about me. I'm on Facebook. I'm very excited. I'm now on Twitter, which is exciting to me. But become involved, start going to your Board of County Supervisor meetings, go to your school board meetings, because the more the better off you will be, because then, you don't wake up one day and go, well, wow, when did this happen? We've got to get involved again in the running of government.
Yeah.
because I think we've started, we've ignored it for too long. And it's kind of like we've woken up and we're like, whoa, what has happened? I mean, seriously, when you look at, this past year, the emotional roller coaster, it's like every time you turned your TV on, you were just kind of like, now what? What's happened now? But my biggest thing is, I would love to have everyone's, support. This election on Tuesday, January 5th, this is a turnout election. The winner will be decided, not through absentee ballots coming in the mail. It will be determined from people showing up on January 5th and casting their ballot.
Yeah, and that cannot be emphasized enough, is particularly these special elections. The turnout rate historically is so low. It literally comes down to who can mobilize the most votes on that day. And as you mentioned, this stuff does not happen by accident. This stuff does not happen overnight. Virginia has been taken from Republicans years ago. This is probably my third time through the Washington, D.C. area, living on the East Coast. Mm-hmm. And years ago, I lived in Maryland. Actually, when I was a D.C. police officer, I lived in Maryland. And I vowed that if I ever came back to the East Coast, which we did after 10 years in Texas with the FBI, I thought to myself, well, I'm going to live in Virginia because Virginia is the conservative state of the two. And when I came back, I was shocked to find out that was no longer the case. Well, that happened because Democrats moved in and voted. And one thing we have to say about the Democrats is they get pretty motivated and they're organized and they get their people out to vote. But guys, that's not limited. That's not limited to Democrats. We can do the same thing. It's just that you have to get involved. You have to get involved and you have to show up. So January 5th, put it on your calendar, get out, vote, get up. I don't care what you're doing. Get up January 5th and vote. Bring people that you know, bring 5 friends, bring 10 friends. If you have 10 friends, socially distanced, of course, wear your mask, but get out there and vote. Vote for Heather Mitchell, okay? Because we need this voice. We need this voice in our state government. And we are not being well served right now. The 2nd District is not being well served right now. We talked about that here in this podcast. But maybe that's even a blessing because who knows what the beliefs of your opponent is. But the fact is that we need your voice of reason in the House. So please, people, get out and vote. So anything else, Heather, you'd like to talk about?
I think we've covered a wide range of subjects.
Absolutely.
But one big thing, obviously, near and dear to my heart is one of the, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I will be submitting a bill to exempt military retirement from Virginia state taxes.
Whoa, I like that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Virginia is one of 8 states that tax military retirement. There's 20 that do not. And what I've discovered, because you've got such a large population between Quantico and down, Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach area, that a lot of times when they retire, they're still relatively young, 50. My husband is 50. He retires in 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then the natural progression is you start a second career.
Yeah.
And what I've seen is a lot of my friends that their last duty station was at Quantico. When they retired, they've moved to other states like Alabama or, Florida or Nevada. I mean, even what's crazy is that New Jersey and New York don't tax military retirement. And that kind of blew my mind on that. But
yeah, it's kind of surprising.
So when you've got the service member and their spouse and maybe, say that, have 3 kids, they move out of state. So now you've lost revenue from 5 people that, shop in the area, that go out to eat in the area. So I think, making Virginia a little bit friendlier for veterans sends a good message that, we support our veterans and our servicemen and women.
Yeah.
And that's something I'd really like to advocate for.
Well, for you veterans out there, if you weren't planning on voting on the 5th, there's a reason for you right there. If no other reason, maybe you can throw FBI agents in there as well.
I would like to gradually notch it up. So I figure if I can start with one, then maybe the next year I can come back and add on to it.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic, and that's actually not even an issue that I had thought about, but that's a really good one, and so I applaud your effort on that. And you know what, I'm really pulling for you. I'm wishing you the best, Godspeed, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us tonight here on the Mark Vine Show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been wonderful. Well,
thanks again. This is Heather Mitchell. And, please get out on the 5th of January and vote for her. Get all of your friends that are out there to vote as well, because we really, really do need this one. Folks, we get the government that we deserve. We get the government that we vote for, and we have no one to blame but ourselves. America is not paying attention right now. I think we are so beat down over this year and just such a draining presidential cycle. And I think people are done, mentally done with politics, but this isn't the time to give up. This is there's still unfinished business, and we still need to keep fighting. So again, check out my website, check out Heather's website, and give me a like, give me a follow, spread the word of this podcast to all of your friends. And in fact, this particular episode, spread this to as many people, particularly those that live in the 2nd District, as you can, so they can understand what her policies are, her proposed policies are, and her motivation, because she really sounds like somebody that cares about Virginia, cares about her district, and will serve the population very, very well. So with that, folks, this is Mark Vines. You guys have a good night. God bless America, the United States Navy, and the United States Marine Corps. In fact, I'll just throw all the services in there. How about that? Even though Army beat Navy pretty bad this year, we'll forget about that, but we'll forgive you for that. You're still brothers in arms, and we will see you guys soon. This is Mark Vines, and I'm out.